and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Could I have a roll call, please?
McCampbell?
Here.
Reed?
Here.
Anderson? Here. Davidson?
Here.
Fleming?
Here.
The first item on our agenda is the consent agenda. We have the following items on the consent agenda this evening. Finances and miscellaneous, which includes minutes of previous meetings, payroll and city claims, beer, liquor, wine, and cigarette licenses, reports, and bonds. We have 6 resolutions. Number 1, a resolution awarding contract for the 2012 ongoing Seal Coat Reclamation Project. Number 2, resolution adopting and approving tax compliance procedures relating to tax-exempt bonds. Number 3, resolution amending the personnel manual for non-union employees. Number 4, resolution selecting company for engineering design and construction observation of Phase 3 of the Flint River Trail. Number 5, resolution approving the placement of stop signs as provided in Chapter 71 of the Burlington City Code. Number 6, resolution approving a contract between the City of Burlington and Burlington Steamboat Days Incorporated to provide beer and wine concession services at Memorial Auditorium, the Port of Burlington, and adjoining grounds. We're also setting a date on June 10th for a public hearing, consideration of amendment to the PUD of the Sunrise West Planned Unit Overlay District, which will amend Section 12 of the street right-of-way. Is there anyone from the audience who wishes to have any of these items removed from the consent agenda?
Tim Scott, 2017 South 15th Street. I'd like number 3, the resolution amending personnel manager for non-union or personnel manual for non-union employees.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none. Council, do you have any that you'd like to have removed?
None, Your Honor.
I'll entertain a motion for all except number 3.
Okay, I make a motion to approve all listed under item 1 consent agenda except for number 3.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. We have a roll call, please.
McCampbell?
Aye.
Reed?
Aye.
Anderson? Aye. Davidson?
Aye.
Fleming?
Aye.
Motion is carried. We'll deal with number 3 at the end, and Kathleen, you won't let me forget that, will you, please? The first, or the next item on our regular agenda is a presentation from the Capitol Theater Group, but we have technical difficulties, so I guess...
So, are you going to,
Are you able to do something without a projector?
or do you want to come back another time?
Well,
Or?
I can do something now without it, and then I'll come back another time also, but...
Oh, okay, we should go to the podium and introduce yourself. And
My name is John Spear. I'm the Executive Director of the Capitol Theater of Burlington, Capitol Theater and Performing Arts Center, which will be opening June 1st. What I had planned to do, and what I have on my computer, is a presentation of the progress that has been made and and pictures of what's happened. But what I would like to at least say to you tonight is thank you very much for the contribution that the city has made to the building and the renovating of the Capitol Theater, for the $50,000 and for everything that you've done all the way to help me and help all of us and those of us who have responsibilities in renovating that, to bring that to fruition. So I wanted to say that first of all. Second of all, I wanted to pledge to the City Council that the Capitol Theater, that the major vision and use of the Capitol Theater is the building and the rebuilding of the downtown area. And our vision is to make sure that everything we bring there will bring magic to the downtown area and will help people come there and experience the wonderful area that is the downtown Burlington. So in honor of that, we will bring in recitals, schools, theater, music. We have one of the things that we're going to bring in is the Southeast Iowa Symphony Orchestra will be doing their kids program and then a program in May. We also want to bring in the best talent that's available in the area. For example, on June 7th through 9th, we're having the Snake Alley Film Festival of Film. which will bring in short films from people in Iowa and all over the world. On June 30th, we'll have the Mississippi River Fest, which will bring in Christian rock bands from all over the area and the nation. On July 14th, only by coincidence, Guy Penrod, another Christian singer, will be an internationally famous Christian singer, will be coming in. On July 21st, we'll have a show it'll be a 50s show. It'll be called the Richie Lee and the Fabulous 50s. And then a Motown show.
That was July 21st with the 50s?
This is July 21st, and then
Okay,
July
I'm gonna make a
28th
note
will
of
be
that
the Motown show. And on August 18th and 19th, the wonderful Mary Lynn Arms, a Broadway performer who lives in Illinois, just eastern Illinois, western Illinois, will be coming in to perform with her group, Rodgers and Hammerstein special, and this will be a fundraiser for the Capitol Theater on August 18th and 19th. On September 15th, the Johnny Winter Band will be coming to perform. And on October 5th and 6th and 11th, we're planning to have a sort of a country music week with Patsy Cline, well, not Patsy Cline herself, of course. Patsy Cline, Dolly Parton.
Do that.
Right, yes, that will be magic. Patsy Cline Dolly Parton on Friday night, Patsy Cline on Saturday, and one of the finest tributes to Johnny Cash that I've ever seen. It's called American Icon, Johnny Cash. That'll be on Wednesday. And then John McCutcheon, a wonderful storyteller, will be performing in November, and the Southeast Iowa Symphony. And we'll end it with a Christmas show by the Lowe family from Branson, and then a wonderful New Year's Eve. So we plan to bring as much as we can to the downtown area. One of the things that I want to do, that I'm planning to do, we do some advertising in a magazine called The Source, which goes to all of Southeast Iowa. And one of the things I want to do with them is to advertise to the entire region how magical Burlington is, the downtown area of Burlington is, and then put that together with the ads that we would do with the Capitol Theater. So bring them in to restaurants, to tour the area, things like that. So again, I apologize for the technical difficulties, but I did want to come down and say thank you, and again, how much I absolutely love being here in this wonderful city, and I hope that I and the Capitol Theater and all of us are working there. Pardon me?
You might mention the movies.
You want to be talking a little bit about movies? Okay. So that's right, movies. In fact, our program, chairman of our program is Terry Ariano, and she's back there, and she and I have been working on getting some of the best movies that we possibly can. There will be art house movies. There will be art house, which includes independent and foreign movies, classic movies, and family films. In the month of June, we'll be offering to the public free family matinees on Sunday afternoons for June 3rd, 10th, 17th, and 24th. Our booking agent for that is getting us for that month E.T., The Sound of Music, Toy Story 1, and Toy Story 2, and then we'll start the regular year. And so, any questions?
I don't have a question, but I have a suggestion.
Yes.
Maybe it would be neat to entertain having a chance where some citizens of Burlington can try to make their own movies, and whoever makes the best movie can have it played at the Capitol Theater.
Well, that's a wonderful
That
idea.
would be something that would be really neat.
Well, just speaking of that, two things we're going to do in that regard. One of them is that, one of the things I've suggested is that when we do a movie, before we do movies, we take about maybe 15 minutes before and show. I wasn't thinking of it as an award thing, but just show movies that kids from SEC have made in their classes or high school kids have made, just give an opportunity for them to show it. The other thing that I want to do is to do something that I helped create in another area, which is a superstar competition where local people can come and audition and then perform for everybody in town, and just do like an American Idol, only Burlington Idol.
That would be sweet.
Something like that.
Are you going to do it, Shane?
Absolutely. I can't sing, I can't dance, but you know what? I would do it anyway.
All right. I'll go with you.
All right.
Bob and Shane show.
Yeah, that's right. Bob and Shane, it's a win-win situation.
Any other questions?
Very impressive. Very impressive.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
And obviously, we wish you very
much
success.
Thanks.
Okay. Very good. All right, moving into public hearings now. Their first hearing is a statement consideration. We have consideration of a loan agreement and a principal amount not to exceed $7.2 million. And I'm going to ask Mr. Furneaux if you could give us some insight into that, please.
This is for the sewer projects, primarily down at the plant itself. There is a little bit that's in there for some sewer separation as well. As we're going through the process, we've talked a little bit about the not sure whether we're going to go through the process of going through the bonding now, or if we may end up holding off, doing basically a bond anticipation note at this point, borrowing money on an as-needed basis, a drawdown basis, through the time of the project, and then doing the final bonding at the end of project when we know the completed costs. There's a risk in that in terms of the cost of borrowing may have gone up with interest rates, but given the concern over the negative outlook that was placed on us back in January from Moody's, there's concern that if we don't have some plan in place to address our ongoing debts and the other funds, that we will be downgraded if we go through that rating process now. We're still doing the evaluation with Travis Squires from Piper Jaffray in terms of which route is the better way to go, but we're trying to make sure that we continue through this process of allowing us to borrow the money up front in case that is the ultimate route that we do choose on this. These are projects that are budgeted in the fiscal year 2013 budget.
Any questions from the audience?
Stan Stratton, 2809 Shamrock Drive. This is phase 2 of the sewer work.
I don't know how many phases have you gone through?
That's what I was wondering. Every time our rates go up, I wonder if our rate increase has covered any of this.
It has. We have done, I think, probably 3 borrowings already as we've gone through the combined sewer process, and there are several phases left to go. We I think we're just starting the second. We're going to be starting this in 2014, the second phase of the major issues. Is that right? And then there's a third phase that begins in 2022.
We're actually there's 3 separate areas that we're separating. The Hawkeye we're done with. We're doing the Cascade. We're right now. The project that we have left is the first phase of the Cascade sewer separation, and there will be probably 2, possibly 3 more phases of the Cascade, and then we've got one whole area that sits between the Hawkeye and the Cascade. Market, Angular, that area. There's like 3 smaller outfalls that come through there. That would be the third area we're doing, and I'm not really sure how many phases there will be in that yet.
And again, we began that. We did we've done 2 or 3 already bond issues on this, going through the separation of the combined sewer. And this project specifically is more about some of the plant issues, I think. There is a portion that is for the sewer separation, but the majority of it is for plant issues. But as you go and look at the rate structure to do this over the next few years, we've got projections of probably needing in the 9% rate increases over the next 3 years, possibly a little longer than that. In the out years, 5% rate increases. This is just a significantly expensive process. DNR has given us through 2027 to get this done, but it is just going to involve a lot of debt. We are under mandates to have it done.
That's what I was questioning, what our rate increases were going to do. Also, back to the waterworks, I thought a year or so ago was mandated by a DNR that we bring that up to speed because of the waste going into the river. Didn't we already do something along that?
It wasn't because of the waste going to the river, it's because the liquid side was at more capacity than the solid side, and they had to be brought into equality.
So this didn't help us at all in the new sequence we're going through.
It's a different issue.
But it did help us, though.
Okay, thank you.
But, technically they're related, of course, but.
Regardless of how you bond for these projects, we're looking at, these would be revenue bonds. They'd be paid back from the revenues from the sewer system, as opposed to general obligation debt from property taxes.
Any other comments from the audience? Council, any questions or comments?
No?
I make a motion to close?
Second that.
I have a motion to close and a second to close the public hearing. Roll call, please.
McCampbell.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Fleming.
Aye.
I have a resolution declaring intent to enter into a sewer revenue loan agreement.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Kathleen?
McCampbell.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Fleming.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion is carried. We have a consideration of budget amendment number 1 for fiscal year 2011-2012. I'm looking to you again, sir.
Yeah, the primary item on here, there's 3 different amendment numbers on there. The one that is of most import that we're required to notify the public of is on the expenditure side. Anytime in a given budget category, whether it's public safety, or in the case of what is at issue here, our debt service payments, where we're going to expend more than what we had originally budgeted, we're required to do an amendment. What had happened in this year is you look at the number, we're looking to amend on that expenditure for debt service payments, the overall debt service amount by $4,090,000, and that has to do with the refinancing that we did of some existing debt obligations. We had not budgeted to do those refinancings, but it was something that could save us a significant amount of money over a period of years. So we did do that. We now, before we get through this year, we need to amend our budget to just let the public know that we do plan on spending the increased amount. You also see on the revenue side, our other financing issues is increased by $3,390,000. That's primarily, again, the debt service issues. She's not showing as much because we have some other numbers in that category, the other financing sources that are not as high as we had originally expected. And she shows that other city taxes is about $500,000 and we had originally budgeted, and that's local option sales tax. Mm-hmm. And I think that was budgeted conservatively. The expenditure amount was already budgeted higher than what the revenues was, but not by that much.
That's been the philosophy of previous administrations, to budget that conservatively. Any questions from the audience or comments? Council, do you have anything?
No.
Nothing against this. I think next time maybe we do this, that we could have the numbers up, so maybe they could follow a little bit better out there,
Okay.
plus whoever is watching at home.
Okay.
So that's looking after that. So.
And I guess I would say that I hope people understand that we didn't spend another $4 million.
Yeah.
We just
We just-
refinanced $4 million.
Just refinanced
But-
existing debt.
Yes.
Your Honor, I have a motion to close.
Do we have a second?
Second
We have a
that.
motion and a second to close the public hearing. Kathleen?
McCampbell.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Fleming.
Aye. Your Honor, I have a resolution approving the budget amendment number 1 for fiscal year 2011-2012.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, Council? Okay, Kathleen?
McCampbell.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Fleming.
Aye.
Motion is carried. We have another public hearing, consideration of an ordinance amending various sections of Chapter 163, Environmental Nuisances of the Burlington Municipal Code. And this is just not a huge thing, but should we have Eric tell us about that?
Yeah, this is essentially taking the allowable grass and weed height before it's declared a nuisance from 12 inches to 8 inches. So that's the primary change. If your grass or weeds are over 8 inches in height, it would be declared a nuisance and can be handled through our nuisance department.
Another, I think, significant change is we're deleting the word vacant from,
just clarifying,
yeah.
it applies to all property and
to all properties.
as it has in the past, but I think that vacant might have
Yeah.
misled some people.
Any questions or comments from the audience?
Make it, oh, sorry.
Leon Shahan, 1821 Mount Pleasant Street. I guess my question is, with all the foreclosures going on, isn't this going to add to the city expense? I mean, there's quite a number of properties where I live that there's a problem.
Well, there's still ownership of that building one way somehow, either by the bank or those individuals. So what I think, and I'm speaking hopefully for the council, it's still going to clean up those properties. It's not going to allow the grass to grow up 8, 9, 10 inches tall. And so it's cleaning up Burlington and helping that. I understand your concern with the foreclosures and how it could be initial expense, but there's still ownership to that property, and that's probably on the
Well,
bank.
I guess what I've seen in going to as many meetings as I have is these houses become problems, and they become houses that are sold for $1, and basically we wind up eating the cost. And if you're lowering the height of the grass, you're going to have more expense that you're not going to
I would say
recover.
that we totally eat the cost, even on the houses that we sell for $1, because those are the houses that are pretty beat down. And then they're going to get remodeled, and then they're going to get back on the roll. So in that respect, I don't really think that's an issue, but I do hear you on the other end, though.
Do we recoup that even if we sell it for $1? The new owner still has to pay the...
Most of these aren't on properties,
Yeah.
all of them are on properties the city doesn't own. So
Right.
when that property owner sells it, they do recoup that money.
Yes. So it is recoupable when the property is sold.
All right, thanks.
Stan, did you have a comment?
Stan Stratton, 2809 Shamrock Drive. We got to maintain the city and keep it in good shape. I agree with that. There are a lot of people that are on fixed income that don't have any money. I hate to see the city go in there and beat up on them when they can't afford to take care of their properties. I wonder what kind of measurements are going to be taken for that. What consideration are you going to give these people? The houses are the biggest investments we probably make in our lifetime. I don't think people knowingly or wantingly let them deteriorate. There's got to be some protective measure in there for the older people that can't do this.
I'll tell you, that's a tough one, and I totally agree with you on that. I totally agree with you. I mean, how do you give somebody that's elderly that can't, that's walking with a walker and doesn't have help, give them a fine for not having their grass cut? But, I'd like to go back to the old days myself, where restitution is paid off by doing work throughout the city. I still think that's something that we need to bring back, but, you're going to, we have a lot of houses, we've got a lot of different situations, and nothing is ever black and white, but you're definitely, your point is received. I definitely understand, and I don't think we should be beating up on people that can't get it done, that are unable. But I think there's other avenues that we could look into to make sure that those people are getting taken care of, and the people that are getting punished are the ones that are just being irresponsible or don't care.
Being irresponsible.
And I think this is also going after those habitual offenders that end up on our nuisance list, every other, meeting. We're going after them. We're not going after the individuals that are trying extremely hard to maintain and take care of their properties. That's not the intent.
Well, like you've said in the other sessions, though, you're after the same people over and over again. What are we gaining?
Well,
Making more rules, more laws, and we're not doing anything about it. I mean,
Oh, but we are.
something to look at.
yeah.
We are. We're going to recoup some of that money, huh? That's good.
Eric, do you have any comment about that?
Thank you.
Thanks.
This only applies to grass. If it gets 8 inches, it's probably going to get to 12 inches. So we're not, probably not hitting more people. It's just requiring a better maintenance of properties that we do hit.
And if there are people like what Stan is referring to that just simply can't afford or don't, then there's an opportunity for public service for somebody to organize a group and get out there and take care of your neighbor's properties
And
and
I will
help
say
them
this
out.
too, I may be opening up a can with this one, but my email is on, it's on TV. I have people that come to me all the time looking to make up some hours for community service or something to that effect, and I run out of things for them to do. So if it was a case where somebody was elderly and couldn't get their grass cut, I would suggest that, to definitely at least give me an email, and I'll see what I can do to get done. But I would definitely be willing to help and assist out on that.
Any other public comments?
Okay, I make a motion to close.
Second.
We have a motion and second to close the public hearing. Kathleen?
McCampbell.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Fleming.
Aye.
You have a motion for preliminary adoption of the first reading of an ordinance amending various sections of Chapter 163 Environmental Nuisances of the Burlington Municipal Code.
Second that.
Any comments? Okay, Kathleen?
McCampbell.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Fleming.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion's carried. Our next public hearing is a consideration of an ordinance vacating and selling Lot C in the final plat of the West Avenue Business Park subdivision in the city of Burlington, Des Moines County, Iowa. Eric, would you like to
Yeah, this,
tell us what this is about?
Lot C is a north-south right-of-way coming off of Sterling Drive.
Again, I apologize, folks. We have some technical difficulties here, but otherwise we'd show you what we're talking about. But
It is
Eric will
directly
explain it.
to the west of Bickford Cottage, behind Carpet Land, the McDonald's, that area out there, the West Avenue Business Park. It was platted for the intention to serve Lot 6 by the previous plat of the property. That lot has since been divided and is partially occupied by Blackhawk Village Apartments, and then the other portion has been sold to the church at the corner of Roosevelt and Mason Road. So based on the zoning at the time in the final plat, it no longer serves a purpose to Lot 6. The church was contacted and they have no interest in seeing that right-of-way extended. Bickford Cottage was contacted and they have no interest in acquiring half of the right-of-way as well. And the developer of the West Avenue Business Park still owns Lot 4 and has requested to vacate it and deed the property to Lot 4 to increase the lot size there. And I believe they have plans to construct a senior apartment at that location. There is a sanitary sewer stubbed into Lot C that will, based on the development prior to any building permit being constructed, will either have to be abandoned and disconnected, or a manhole will have to be installed. So they're, I guess, waiting to see how they develop that lot, but that will be a requirement of the building permit. Planning and Zoning Commission did vote 5-0 to recommend approval of the vacating of the right-of-way. So with that, if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them.
Council, any questions right now?
I don't
No.
have any questions.
Anyone from the audience with a question or comment?
Make a
Seeing
motion.
none.
Make a
Okay.
motion to close.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Kathleen?
McCampbell.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Fleming.
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion for preliminary adoption of the first reading of an ordinance vacating and selling Lot C in the final plat of West Avenue Business Park subdivision, City of Burlington, Des Moines County, Iowa.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anything further, Council? Okay, Kathleen, please.
McCampbell.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Fleming.
Aye.
Motion's carried. We have an ordinance to proceed with.
Your Honor, I have a motion for preliminary adoption of the second reading for an ordinance rezoning properly locally known as 514 and 516, South 6th Street from R4 multifamily residential to C2 general commercial zoning redistrict.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Eric, is there anything else that needs to be said about this? Nothing's changed
No,
from last time?
no changes.
Okay, any comments from the audience? This is our second time around on this. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion then, Councilman Fleming.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Councilman Reed.
That's Bob.
Yeah, I can tell the difference.
There is a difference.
I know he looks younger than me.
Yeah, that's it.
There you go.
Yeah. I have a motion to amend the primary adoption of the second reading for an ordinance rezoning Property is locally known as 514, 516 South 6th Street from R4 multifamily residential to C2 general commercial rezoning district to read as following. For waiver preliminary consideration and adoption of the second reading and for final adoption of an ordinance rezoning properties locally known as 514, 516 South 6th Street from R4 multifamily residential to C2 general commercial zoning district.
Have an amendment offered? Someone second?
I'll second that.
Becky, Mrs. Anderson seconds. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Basically, we're skipping the final reading of the ordinance. Right. We have a vote on the amendment, please.
McCampbell.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Fleming.
Aye.
Now we can have a vote on the motion as amended.
McCampbell.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Fleming.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion is carried.
Your Honor, there's two resolutions. We have the first one is a resolution authorizing city staff to negotiate an agreement with Schuck and Britston to fully explore the possibility of rebuilding or rehabbing the existing Cascade Bridge.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Furneaux, would you like Ron to talk about this? Or?
Actually, I'll defer to Ron. We have talked about it and reviewed the request for qualifications that we did receive, and I kind of listened to what he had to say, and I would be in agreement, so I can let him summarize.
Thanks, Jim, Your Honor. Just as a quick recap of the memo that you have in your packet, as you're aware, we were approved for $1 million of highway bridge replacement and rehabilitation program funding. The Federal Highway Administration has determined that in order for us to access that money, we need to more fully explore the option of rebuilding or rehabbing the existing structure. To comply with that requirement, in March, we sent out 14 packets soliciting proposals to complete the additional evaluation. On April 20th, we received 3 proposals to do that work. Staff has looked at all 3 of those. We've checked a couple of references. We're recommending that we be allowed to negotiate an agreement with Chuck Britson Incorporated, a Des Moines engineering firm. We felt they had the most relevant recent experience. They're proposing a team with over 80 years of structural engineering experience, and they have done several evaluations on bridges and some construction projects. I'm not sure the exact number of construction projects in the state of Iowa. That's pretty much it. We would be, with your approval, we would negotiate that agreement and bring it back to you, probably not the first council meeting in June, but the second council meeting in June for your approval of the actual agreement with them.
Council, you have any questions for Ron or Jim?
I'm ready to move ahead.
So am I.
Two.
Any
Moving forward.
question or comment from the public?
Julie Bowers, Working Bridges, 4280 20th Street, Grinnell, Iowa. I agree with Mr. Kanoki's comments regarding the FW, Federal Highway Administration Act, requiring a better look at the Cascade Bridge for restoration before going to the plan for the 2009 replacement of the Cascade Bridge, which has been evidently the that's been the plan for several years, to replace this bridge. In order to access the $1 million grant, you needed to have gone through that process, quite frankly, 2 years ago. A year ago in January, I was contacted by Iowa DOT, Cultural Affairs there, and suggested that Cascade Bridge was one of 2 bridges in Iowa that they would like my company to take a look at. We are new. We don't have that kind of experience here in Iowa, but my team has restored dozens of bridges around the country. And when I was looking for an engineering firm to look at the bridge in Poweshiek County, Shuck Britson, VJ Engineering, Calhoun Burns, I talked to nearly every engineering firm in the state of Iowa, and they were unwilling to take a look at this historic bridge restoration. So I thought it was very interesting that IDOT was very interested in the fact that we were forming a company that would specialize in historic truss bridges. In August, I was contacted on August 23rd by Alan Lukens of Klingner and Associates in order to see if we might have some information. He had been referred to us by Libby Weilinga from IDOT and said that we were the firm to go to in Iowa for historic bridge work, essentially. So I followed up on that nearly every 2 weeks looking for an RFP from Klingner to do this study, and we would have come in very low at that point in terms of coming in and taking a look at your bridge and assessing it as to restoration or rehabilitation to comply with the Section 106 process through SHPO and the Iowa DOT. And on October 17th, I contacted Doug Warden. I had tried many times to contact him to see what was going on with this process, because we are actively looking for work within the scope of what we do, which is historic truss bridges. And he said, oh no, Klingner is doing this RFP and they will have to subcontract you. So it was, kept following up. The next thing I knew, that the city of Burlington was putting out an RFP. I had seen, just doing a web search, because I was following this project for over a year now, and found Ms. Clark and several other people here in Burlington that were not happy with the way things were proceeding with the bridge and why that was happening. So I offered our services to come in and take a look at the bridge, and did that in early April. So we've been following this project for a long time. We were told that because the city of Burlington had put into their requirements for your RFP that the engineering firm had to be a pre-qualified IDOT structural steel bridge engineering company, that we were not able to put in a proposal to look at your bridge, which would have come in significantly lower than what we had to come in with finally. At that time, I contacted VJ Engineering, which was one of the engineers on the list of qualified. They said, oh no, we've already got our proposal ready and we're sending it in, because I'm trying to work with the engineers in Iowa to essentially help them understand that these bridges can be restored and that it can be done for significantly less dollars than building a new bridge. Your city has some fiscal problems, so I would think that there would be some great interest in perhaps restoring this bridge to vehicular traffic. But everything that I come up with, the engineers always say the same thing, and they're very right. They use terms like fracture critical. Do you know what that means? Any of you, as regards to historic truss bridges? Mr. Kanoki probably does.
I don't, so please elaborate.
Fracture critical means that if one part breaks, the bridge might fall down. That's all it means. And so, but it's a very scary term, fracture critical. Steve Hartman addressed this bridge as being obsolete.
If one part breaks, the whole bridge falls down.
Could fall down. That's what fracture critical means in terms of engineering. And there are other ones, non-redundant, because this bridge was a one Baltimore truss and 3 Pratt trusses that are pin connected. Most Iowa engineers do not like pin connections and I-bars. And I would not have known unless I had come to take a look at this bridge that it had been so rehabbed in the 1960s that those pin connections don't function the same way that they did when the bridge was first built. They have been welded together. All of the lateral bracing and the rods that connect into the pin connections have been cut and welded into gusset plates that were then welded onto the bridge and welded over the pins. So now you have a very rigid connected bridge, which is part of the structural problems that it's having now with rust. There is also pointing at one of the piers that are holding up one of the Pratt trusses, can't remember, on the south side, that where water draining down into your Cascade Ravine has caused the degradation of the cement and the aggregate in this bridge. They call this bridge an obsolete design. Well, in my world, when people call truss bridges obsolete, they're generally one-lane bridges that no longer fit the traffic needs of the road systems that they're on. So in this case, you have a bridge that was always designed for 2 lanes of traffic. It was designed for a trolley system, so it was designed for very heavy engineering. In 1995, there was a suggestion, and this bridge in the photos that I looked at in 1995 was outstandingly beautiful and very well painted and taken care of. But they did say that the deck truss, that is the grading part on it, was causing some of the issues down below with the rust and the salts and sands that get under there during the winter months. And it was recommended that it would be cleaned off, quite frequently to prevent any section loss that comes into these sorts of designs. So I just wanted to stand here in front of you and say that we worked very hard to be able to find an engineer that was on the pre-qualified list, and we had to go to Chicago to find that engineer. And Hassam Abdu of Alfred Benish in Chicago, who have many years of experience of bridges and are also doing the I-74 bridge in Davenport, was willing to step in with us and to work with the craftsmen that understand these bridges. I know that there's been a lot of talk about the forensics, looking at being able to to ultrasound these things to find out what's going on with the metal. And this would be an iron bridge, essentially. I-bars are iron, and it is a marvel of engineering design. Your new bridge can't span that ravine where it's at. To put in a concrete bridge, you have to move it back to where the ravine is much less deep in order to mitigate the cost for putting in a new bridge. Therefore, you wipe out a considerable amount of the environment in your ravine there, which is, and this is a marvel of engineering design. The fact that they were able to build this bridge in 1896 to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the state of Iowa. I'm passionate about these bridges. Mine fell down in Iowa, While we were working with our county supervisors to get ownership of the bridge, it fell down. And now it has been delisted from the National Register. So I am well aware of how grants work, how the fact is that you have $1 million that you're trying to use. In many cases, you would be better served to forget that $1 million and just go ahead with your bridge design. It would have saved you a lot of time and money over the last few years. If you were really just willing, because there is no protection to this bridge for being on the National Register. You can do anything you want with it. It's your bridge. But if you wanted the money, then you had to work with SHPO. So those are my concerns. I know that we are new in the business, and I know that you have already made up your minds to resolve that Chuck Britson would get this job. And I am not discounting their experience. They do bridge inspections all over the state of Iowa. That's part of what they do as a company. And all the engineering companies in Iowa pretty much do the every 2-year bridge inspections, part of their business structure. So I don't know if any of you have any questions. Or if by chance our DVD was shared with the council. Were you able to see that?
We saw it.
You did see it. So you saw how beautiful a restored bridge can be, and that it is simply a construction project, and that
And I was at your presentation at Terry's house, too.
Yes. And very exciting, our movie will be opening the show at the Snake Alley Festival of Film. So all of the citizens that are interested will be able to see how a bridge is restored. And it's an erector set. These bridges can be fixed. I feel that we have an excellent team that is very well qualified to take a look at this, that we wouldn't just stop with the engineers coming in to take a look at it, but that we would bring in the craftsman and the contractor as well, so that you would be well served to know whether this bridge can be restored, and that we would come in with a bent towards restoration rather than replacement. Although I could not guarantee what our engineer would say. I mean, that's up to when the inspections would take place. So I know that you're ready to vote on this. I had hoped to be part of I had hoped that you would perhaps require presentations so that we could show the quality of the work that our team has done across the state, across in Texas, in Kansas, where they're moving a 175-foot bridge based on our recommendations into the city of Fort Scott, where it will be the hub of their trail system, and they look at it as a real way to showcase their city. In September, I'll be presenting a paper at the Historic Roads Conference. Your bridge is on one of the most historic roads in America, our Great River Highway here. And it would be an amazing thing for Burlington as part of your renaissance to showcase the bridges and not to tear down this bridge. So whoever gets the job, and I'm glad to say that you are very clear that you want them to take a good look at it, but I do believe that we were overlooked in the process.
Thank you for your comments. And I do agree with, actually, we were out walking the other day and we walked across that bridge and we saw that plate there, 1896. That is a marvel. They could build that thing in 1896. Yeah. Thank you. Any other comments?
Leon Shahan, 1821 Mount Pleasant Street. I'm going to be the contrarian here, as I usually am. With the city's finances the way they are, I just don't see how this project is a priority at all. You have another more heavily used bridge that is probably in worse shape. That's the bridge on Mount Pleasant Street. That thing is getting, both from the top side and the bottom side, pretty scary looking. I've been after a city council for years. You really need to prioritize what you're doing in this town. The money isn't unlimited. You're running out of borrowing capacity. Is this, for the few homes that are on the south side of the bridge, is this really a priority?
Leon, where was that bridge you were south of?
It's a bridge on Mount Pleasant Street over the railroad tracks. You know, you're going to be in a situation, I'm not an engineer and I'm not going to profess that I am, but just looking at that thing from the bottom side, from the top side, you've got problems with that bridge. And you have to ask yourself, okay, if we fix the Cascade Bridge and then more problems are discovered with the bridge on Mount Pleasant Street, where are you going to get the money for that? You're maxing your credit cards out. You have for quite some time. You really need to think, is this a priority project? I don't think it is.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience?
Hello, my name is Terry Ariano, 2800 South Main Street. I wasn't going to start by saying this, however, you reminded me that the citizens of Burlington voted in the Imagine campaign. The #1 thing they wanted to see happen in this community was to have the Cascade Bridge fixed or replaced.
That's right, #1.
That's right, it's #1. So we're not here to negotiate, is this important or not? Right. We already know, the community spoke. I have a few questions going on with this, to fully explore this bid to this particular company. And my first question is really because I wasn't privy to how they were selected, but do they have a history of recommending any bridges that they've recommended to have them be rehabilitated or rather than being rebuilt? Can anyone answer that?
Yes, I do. Actually, when we looked at the three proposals, and I don't know, Ron, what your thoughts were, but out of the three, there was one firm that had very limited experience in this kind of a project, and that, to me, that meant that it would have been pretty risky to work with them. But both of these firms had some demonstration of working with projects where they talked about both rehabbing and replacing. So this was a company that had experience both ways.
Is it a lot? I mean, have they done 100 bridges or 2 bridges or 4 or, I mean, where does this kind of fall in?
I think they gave a demonstration of 20-some projects over a period of, I don't remember the years, but 4 years. So they have significant.
They've indicated, that they've done, it was a little over 2 dozen in the last 4 years that they've studied, but I'm sure that they have not rehabbed all of those. They've done studies on them, and they are at least, and in my personal experience with them is 0, just like it is with Ms. Bowers and VJ. I've never worked with any of them before. So we're taking what was provided to us in the proposals, and we're just looking at what they've provided to us. I mean, we're not disbelieving what they're telling us. So
No, I don't have any of that information. That's why I'm curious. I haven't seen that published anywhere, and that would be a real important factor in making that decision, I would imagine.
They're indicating in the proposal that in the last 4 years they've been involved in studies of, I believe this was 27 bridges. How much in-depth they did on each of those bridges, I can't answer that.
I can answer part of that. They have done.
Well, we can't have you do that, please.
A couple other questions that I have, again, just going back to this. Does this company then, do they know companies that rehab bridges? So after they make an evaluation, would they be able to say, well, these other companies we've seen or we've worked with do rebuilding or rehabs that to make the next step? Does that happen?
That's part of the requirement if we have an agreement with them. So I'm assuming that they do have someone that they can talk to about that. Yeah.
Okay. And one other question, because I'm curious about this, is what can we as citizens have a better understanding of where these bids, what the costs are, like a high-low? I mean, what do they come in at 10,000 and then 100,000, but somebody else has more experience? I mean,
Yeah, I think that's listed, the price, yeah.
And where is it?
It was on the city website
Yeah.
and under our agenda.
Okay, and was this from,
And we also talked about it last week in depth, quite a bit.
was
I
this at a
believe the
work
Hawkeye
section?
published all of those numbers, and they range from about 20,000 to 65,000.
Okay.
If that's what you want to know.
Okay. If it was at a work session, I didn't know, because I did call in advance to find out if there was any discussion of having a citizens committee, like we had mentioned 2 weeks ago at a city council meeting, so that we could try to circulate this information. So if where the answer is to go to the minutes of a work session and try to pull that out. Is that what I'm hearing? That's how we find that?
No, was it published in the paper too?
Yes.
I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the radio?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that on the radio.
And
All right.
I think too that, your group would like to see this move along at a good speed, and I think we're trying to answer to that now. And I appreciate Ms. Bauer's passion for the bridge, and I hope that bridge can be saved. But I want to know the truth, and I am comfortable with this company.
Good. That's what we want to know too. I mean, that's really what we're reaching out for, so. Okay, well, thank you, and I'm sorry if there was something published and I missed it. I appreciate the direction so that I can find it in the future.
That's quite all right. I miss
Thank you.
things all the time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any
Ms.
other
Bowers?
comments from the audience?
Ms. Bowers, can I have you come up one more time? I just have a question for you. How many rehabs has your company or the people that you're involved in?
We've done 12 full restorations in the state of Michigan.
Bridges like ours?
Pratt trusses, Parker trusses, not a Baltimore. No, we haven't done a Baltimore. That's with the team that I work with. Working Bridges has gone out and done another 12 in the last year from 1883 bowstring and 1876 bowstring in Arkansas, where a judge in a county there was very interested. We were very integral in the Pratt Truss Bridge in Texas being restored, and our team from Michigan went down and bid on that job through TxDOT and won it, and it opened on April 2nd. In Fort Scott, Kansas, we looked at 3 bridges there. One was a three-span bowstrings, the same King bridges that I had in Poweshiek County. Another was a 175-foot Parker truss that was just given permission by the Kansas State Historical Society for a request to move from the keeper of the National Register.
So I don't want to milk this out because obviously you've been involved with a lot of things. So what are you looking to do? Do you feel like you can do a better job at a less price? Do you feel, what are you doing?
I think that our team...
Is it important that you get it done, that it gets done, or is it important to you that your team does it, and why is it important that your team does it? What is going to be the benefit?
I think it's important for my team to do it because we are trying to build a reputation throughout all the states that we are on the side of historic truss bridge restorations, and not that Chuck Britson may not be. I don't think that I can't account for my engineer. They're going to go in, and engineering is a science, and they're going to take a look at your bridge from a very scientific standpoint.
The problem is that we can't pay several people to come in and give us estimates.
Well, I understand that. So when I had to go out of Iowa and find the engineer on the list of the pre-qualified engineers, our price jumped $20,000, and that's just simply a fact. Rather than working with the engineer that I would have brought down from Michigan, who has all of the experience in the drawings for those projects, we weren't allowed to bring them in, and the construction company that has also done these projects. Now I realize that, if it was a great world, we would come in and we would give you a design build plan that would perhaps meet the criteria of the state of Iowa and the FWHA, that would mitigate the costs, again, considerably, rather than, and you may still see my team on the bidding side of this. You never know. But what we're trying to do is to educate people that these bridges can be restored, and that they can be restored at a fraction of the cost of building a new bridge.
Okay, thank you.
And can I just answer her question about the 27 bridges? I did some research in the IDOT database for Chuck Britson to see what they do, and
well, they're also not here to talk.
No, I understand that, but this is public record. 27 bridges. They are hired by counties to do the every 2-year inspections. That's what that is. So.
Thank you.
Your Honor, could I ask Ms. Bowers a question before she gets away? Just more curiosity than anything. Your proposal that you submitted to us on April 20th says the Piano Bridge is the first of the Working Bridges project successfully completed and open to traffic on April 2nd, 2012. That doesn't jive with what you're saying.
Okay, so Working Bridges only started as a company at the beginning of 2011. And it is one of the 12 bridges that we have gone out and looked at and inspected in the last year, and it's one that went into construction and was bid by the team in Michigan. My team has a lot more experience, and I wasn't allowed to address that because I couldn't use the engineer or the contractor that was already on the pre-qualified list for IDOT for steel bridge any bridge construction here in Iowa. So they are now, and that is Davis Construction out of Lansing, Michigan, and they are the ones that have done the bulk of that work. So I am not an engineer. I'm just somebody that couldn't find an engineer here in Iowa to do the kind of work that needed to be done. And I searched high and low for many years to find that, and had to go out of state, and in fact was penalized by SHPO for not being able to use an Iowa engineer, because how do you prove a negative? But none of them were interested at the time in working on our truss bridge in Poweshiek County. And, and I talked to all of them.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the audience?
I can't be quiet. Stan Stratton, 2809 Shamrock Drive. This vote deal, it was never on the ballot. Where'd this vote come in at? I've been asking you guys to put this on the ballot when the two new councilmen came up. I said, what an opportune time to put this on the ballot to see what Burlington wants. Unfortunately, there are some people living on the wrong side of the bridge. I feel sorry for them. Do how much my taxes go up pay for it? No. If we could restore that bridge where it has some significance, value, historically, draw people in, I could see spending money. Otherwise, all it is a drain. We're spending all this money for all these studies, and we don't even know if Burlington wants one because we have not asked the people. I ask you again to put it on a ballot. You have this tax deal coming up in August, right? For the 1%?
August 7th.
What an opportune time. If you're sure you're doing what Burlington wants, I can't see why you wouldn't put it on there. Otherwise, what you're telling me is, you 5 people all said you wanted a bridge when you got elected. I agree with you. But that doesn't mean everybody else goes along with you.
Well, Stan, the only thing I'll comment on that is you said a vote. The individuals within Burlington did speak with the Imagine campaign, and that was the #1 priority that they wanted. And then that you had a right at that time to give your input about. And so that was one of the big, that was the #1 thing on the list that they wanted.
Does that have more significance than a vote on a ballot?
Well,
I don't think so.
There's sometimes people get out and sometimes people don't vote.
If you're doing what you think's right, what are you afraid of? That's why you're going to this bond issue anyway, so people don't have a vote. Come on. Duh.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else with a comment? Seeing none. Counselor, do you have any comments at this time?
No, let's
Questions?
move ahead.
We call for the vote, Kathleen?
McCampbell?
Aye.
Reed?
Aye.
Anderson?
Aye.
Davidson?
Nay.
Fleming?
Aye.
Motion is carried, and we'll move on to the next issue.
Your Honor, last resolution, I have a awarding contract for an animal shelter remodel expansion project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for awarding the contract for the animal shelter remodel expansion project. Comments from Ron or Jim?
I don't think that I have that much to say. This is, again, that hasn't been said already for the council's benefit. I've come in on the back end of this, but you've had the 3 bids that came in on it. The recommendation was to work with the low bid on the project at $820,000. This is a project was originally anticipated, hopefully, to come in under $1 million, with the anticipation of us paying for half of the costs up to that. Everything looks like it's in place, and the animal shelter group that's raised the funds is really look excited about moving forward, and it makes sense to follow through with that.
Comments from the audience?
Tim Scott, 2017 South 15th Street. I've known for years that something's needed to be done at the animal shelter. It does need to be done, and I commend the group that's raised the funds to get it done. I'm not so happy about the amount of the contribution by the city, but I guess when commitments are made, commitments are made. I would just hope that the council would take advantage of the situation and the purse strings at this point and move forward with some kind of planning stage to reduce the need for the animal shelter itself and to reduce the number of animals that are put down on an annual basis. It's ridiculous in this community that we are killing 775 animals with our own hands. The cost of that is tremendous. There are actions, there's education programs. There are actually programs that you can take feral cats, sterilize them, and put them back into the community and reduce the animal population in that fashion. Some of it's pretty simple. Some of it's cheaper than killing animals. And I think the Humane Society should take the lead, and that the staff and the council ought to be behind them 100%. You know, if we're going to partner in building a building to warehouse animals, then let's have a plan for reducing the need for that. Why do we want to continue to spend more and more money on, and not fix a problem? Now's the opportunity. You've got the purse strings. Sit before them, set out a plan before the society and yourselves and say, let's do something about the problem. I think a bigger building is just going to exacerbate the problem. We're going to see more animals brought to the shelter that are going to be around for a longer time. That's going to increase the amount of food, that's going to increase the amount of waste that's produced, that's going to increase the amount of dollars that are spent on personnel, on utilities. And the costs are just going to keep going up and up and up. It's just simple, put a plan together. At least make a commitment through your contribution to sit down with the society and make a plan. I mean, that's all I'm asking. If you're going to spend $410,000, then please do something other than spend $410,000.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, by the way, Chapter 65, 65.08, 65's Animal Protection and Control. Disposition of unclaimed animals. If the unknown owner of an animal apprehended or impounded cannot be located after not less than 3 days or more than 7 days. Not more than 7 days. Or if the owner is known and does not, after reasonable notice, claim the animal may be humanely destroyed or otherwise disposed of. By code, our obligation is to maintain the animal for 7 days. That's sad in of itself, but we can't afford it. We can't afford to go longer than that. That's where the Humane Society steps in and takes control of the animal if it's a desirable one. And keep that in mind, that we're not there to warehouse animals forever and ever and ever. As a community, it's a 7-day obligation.
Thank you.
Can I make a statement yet, or?
Go for it.
Okay, I just want to address something just because I went out of town to see my son graduate from AIT, and I found out I was getting my rear end kicked the whole time I was gone. So I would like to express my viewpoint so that everybody understands where I'm coming from. I've been called a liar, a flip-flopper, and all sorts of things, and I even had a friend of mine call me up and said, if you don't get right with the animal shelter, take my name out of your cell phone, which I obliged him. But I do want to make this statement. Before I do, I want to say this, I want to make it perfectly clear. I love animals. My daughter's the biggest animal lover in Burlington. She's got books at home. You can just point to a dog and ask her what it is, and she can tell you what it is. The dog that we have came from an animal shelter. My daughters used to go out to the animal shelter on a regular basis and walk dogs. We've donated blankets to the animal shelter. I've been out there. I've got pictures of the animal shelter on my cell phone. It is subpar, to say the least. Something needs to be done. That being said, let me read this the way I wrote it, so that way I don't get sidetracked. I 100% believe we need to revamp the animal shelter. It's not sufficient for our city's needs, nor is it for the animals as well as the employees and volunteers. Some people's pets are like their children, and if one of their children got loose for some uncertain reason, it would be nice to have an adequate place for them to stay. till the owners can be notified and pick them up. We also need those same qualities for the animals that are taken in because of neglect or abuse. I also realize this is a sensitive subject with some of the community, judging by all of the emails that I've received all week. But at what cost do we build such a facility? Not only do we need to recognize it's going to cost more to operate it, higher utility bills, water and upkeep, which to me is a small issue because we could take care of that with stiffer penalties for people that are being irresponsible, so no big deal there. But I've been in the construction business, a part of the construction business for over 15 years. And I've worked on Great River Medical Center, I've worked on the Girl Scout building, I've worked on a lot of buildings in this town. And I've never worked on a building that came under budget. Everything always goes over budget. And my only point, even when, and I want to say this, even at the work session when the city manager said, well, hey, we're in distress, can we at least stop at the 182 or 32, whatever it was? And Eric said, no, that's unacceptable. You guys said that you're going to give us up to $500,000. And to me, what that means is the bill is going to be closer to $500,000. Now, I tried to look at this constructively, and I thought, well, you know, here's a way that we can take care of some business, do some house cleaning, because I believe that there's city employees that are working for the city that are just milking the city dry, and they don't need to be collecting a check. Those people need to be gotten rid of. But when I think about that, that's only going to come up to what? $75,000, $100,000? So the bottom line comes down to, and I just want everybody to understand this, this is why I'm voting the way that I am. Not because I'm a flip-flopper or that I'm a liar, because I also want to say this was voted in May 2nd, 2011. I wasn't even on the council. And from day one, even before I got elected, I was on the radio show stating I'm for the animal shelter because as far as I'm concerned, I want it to be nice. Angie Beard is one of my dear friends. I know the family. I want, you know, on a friendship basis alone, I would want to do that, but that's not good business. You have to look at the entire cost. And what this is going to cost is a lot of good employees their job. Because we don't have the money, so the money's going to have to come from somewhere. So that means maybe that good cop that you got stopped by the other day and he treated you like a human being, he may be losing his job because he doesn't have the seniority. Because when you let people go, you can't let people go by who's the best worker, who you think is the best person. You have to do it the right way or we get sued. So the bottom line is, when you look at it, this money has to come from somewhere. There's no place else for it to come. As far as I can see, and somebody can definitely pitch in, we're going to have to get rid of a lot of city employees that we need. You know what I'm saying? I want to get rid of the dead weight, anybody that feels like, you know, it's a joke to show up and punch a ticket. But there's a lot of employees that work hard every day. You know what I'm saying? And I can't look them in the face and say, well, hey, I'm sorry, because nothing against dogs, I love animals. But animals don't have to worry about paying for their children's braces or a broken arm or worry about utility bills. People do. And there's a lot of city employees that count on that money and they work hard for it. And because of this animal shelter, because there can be no give. And when I brought it before, you know, we couldn't meet in the middle. You know, when it was asked, there was no meet in the middle. It has to be this way. And to me, I think that's just selfish because it has to be greater than the animal shelter. This is about Burlington. This is about what's best for the city of Burlington. I've been taking abuse saying, well, Shay, you hate animals and all this stuff, which is a total farce. No, what I want to do is I want to do exactly what I promised my constituents, the people that voted for me, what I said I would do. I didn't run on the animal shelter ticket. I ran on transparency, responsible spending. You know, that's why I find it a surprise that people are surprised that I'm barking about the price. Before I even got on the election, I was on the radio show, and I said how I agree with the animal shelter, but the price, no way. I've been saying that from day one, and I still feel the same way. As a matter of fact, and I'm still trying to help. I made a phone call to Lowe's and Menards. I sent a letter to Menards, to their donation department. You can't get a name. And I asked them if they would be willing to help us out and donate building supplies to help out the city of Burlington because they're here located in our city and we spend much money there. I'm not against the animal shelter, but when you're looking at the fact that we don't have money and it's going to cost other innocents their jobs, I'm just saying, to me, I have to sleep at night. I have to sleep at night. And I have to live with me. And I didn't join the council to try to make friends. I did it to try to make the best decisions I possibly could with the information available. The information available to me is there is no money. And to pay for that, the money's going to have to come from cutting people and getting rid of workers because the money can't come from anywhere else. We still got to pay the lights. We still got to have clean water. We still got to take up the trash. We still got to take care of the roads. So I did my little ramble, but I want it to be known. I'm not against animals. My statement was, can't we be creative? Can't we look? Can't we find a common ground or meet in the middle to try to get this done? And that was never, when it was brought up, it was never an option. The option was it's going to be this way or else. And on that, I can't vote yes.
Thank you, Councilman Campbell. Mr. Benny, I see you at the podium.
Yeah, I just wanted to correct one minor thing.
Right.
At the last work
Tell us,
session.
we need a name and address.
Oh, Eric Benny, 3311 Crystal Drive. I'm also here representing the Humane Society as a board member. One thing Councilman Campbell mentioned was that I adamantly at the last work session said, no, we're going to refuse. It's $500,000 of the road. I think the paper accurately reflected what my comments were at that work session, which were what was my guess as when I took this to our board as to how they would respond. And my response to that was no, I wasn't sure that they would support it. When I left the work session the other night, I believe the understanding was I was going to go to our board and discuss with them what I interpreted as you're not going to renege, but you had requested that we consider the possibility of utilizing our funds, which would be above and beyond the 50% agreement,
right, to
kind of reimburse the city. At no point in time did I ever state that I would not take that to our board or that I would not adequately encourage our board to consider such an option. In fact, we've contacted contractors to come to get us some estimates on some of the expenses we're going to have in the meantime, which we'd ticketed that additional money for, because we have to maintain a temporary shelter in that meantime. Once we have those ideas, that's going to give us a number that we can use to then compare that to our excess. That's going to help us in evaluating whether or not, as a board, we're willing to convey extra funds to the city. No answer has been given by our board. So I'm sorry, that's an incorrect statement. Another thing I do want to touch upon very briefly is, because a lot's been said about this issue, the plan, the size of the structure in comparison to the size that the animal airspace is expanding, it's not the same as the size that the facilities are expanding. In other words, what's really kind of hurt out there isn't necessarily the size of the animal space, but it's the space that's used by not only our employees, but city employees who include the police and the animal control officer, and then also the public when they come in there. The facility, I think the paper's quoted me 100 times. I keep saying the word antiquated. That's about right. It just can't adequately address the needs that are faced by it today. In 1978, yeah. Today, no. It's just not user-friendly, and that's one of the biggest things. I also want to commend Mr. Scott's statements about some of the ideas he has. You'd be surprised, but we've discussed them in our meetings. Also the penalties. We would encourage the city to raise those penalties. We're on your side in that. That's a partner thing that we encourage. There's nothing wrong with that. And then utilities. This structure is being built. One of the words we talked a long time ago is green. We're building this as energy efficient as possible. That goes down to the exterior material used for the structure. It's more energy efficient. There's a new, and I'm not the architect, so I can't expand or elaborate on those things, but they're there. The architect has estimated that you would see a very small increase, if any, in utilities. That's amazing, but you know what? When you're comparing a structure built in 1978 with a structure that can be built today utilizing the expansive technology, it shouldn't be surprising. And so I hope that at least addresses some of those concerns, just to remind people that they're there. And again, I do want to make very clear, we are considering your request to utilize some of the additional funds to come back to the city. I hope to have an answer soon, but I can't have that until we get the additional information. I had spoken with Mr. Fourneau about that very fact. So if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
I do know there's a question out in the community. Is the Humane Society going to spend your $500,000 first before the city spends their $300,000 or $400,000? And I know the answer to that, but I'd like to hear you say it because people out there are asking that question.
And I think the simple answer to that, as anticipated, would be yes. And that's from the simple point that we agreed back in February when this was going to go to bond. We had been approached by the city council, and you had requested that, hey, it's a little easier on us if we can bond later. And we completely agree. That's not a problem. You know, we raised our funds for a reason. They're to be used, and we want to use them for the purpose that they were raised for. So I've talked to our board. We're fine with using our half, or however, whatever it ends up being, by if it be a half or more, whatever. We're willing to use that first to get, fully invested and moving forward, and then allow the city on the hind end as late as possible to then bond to cover the remaining expense, whatever that may be. And again, if that's 50% or if it's less than that, that's where we're at. So.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Are there any other comments from the audience before we proceed?
Stan Stratton, 2809 Shamrock Drive. I can remember when the first proposal came to the council, I don't know, a year or so ago, when we gave the ballpark $700,000. That's what we was going to give them at that time. Everybody was almost in bat for it. I thought it was extremely high, and I didn't go for it. I complained. I think what Eric's done is real good. He's done his homework. He's got it down to where it shouldn't cost us $400,000. Do I think we should have a dog hotel? No. Should they be taken care of? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to comment? Council, you have comments?
I just have a little brief statement that, being on the council ever since this got brought up, one of the initial numbers that was thrown out was 1.4 million, and that was a ballpark figure. At one time, I think a lot of people had some initial sticker shock with that, and I was one of them. And I want to commend the Humane Society, as Eric, as everybody else on that board, to get this, in a more manageable number. Last year, we moved forward, and the previous council, me being part of it, sort of promised this. My thing is there's been $518,000 raised by them. And this is a building that we will share with them. This is ultimately Burlington's building, and we need to remember that. We have a cost savings by being in partnership with them that a lot of us forget about. And that over, within less than a 10-year period of time, it will pay for itself because of cost-saving measures. And that's because of the Humane Society. If we had to go on this venture all by ourselves, we could not afford it. But I'm going to vote yes for this because of all their hard work and plus the commitments I gave them last year, as well as even in February.
Thank you. Other comments?
I'd like to make a comment too. I wasn't on here when it originally was voted in, but the way I look at it, by agreeing to it at that time, the city was like the lead donor. And, the lead donor says they'll put so much in, and that's the reason other people went ahead and donated money. And I just think if we vote no on this, that would be a slap in the face to those people who, in good faith, donated or pledged to this. I think the way it's been worded, it's not to exceed $500,000. That's telling the city, though I don't care what price it would come in and how much of a Taj Mahal it would be, they cap that price for the city at $500,000, that it cannot go over that, and it looks like it's going to be less than that. And that the fact that they're going to use their money first, we don't have to borrow it. I mean, I think that this group of people has done everything they can to keep costs down for the city, and is looking at keeping the cost down in the future for the city as far as the maintenance and the care of these animals. I like what Tim said. I don't like the idea of putting animals down, but I don't like the idea of keeping them forever. I come from the country, and we didn't have shelters there, but I think this is a good thing. I'm happy to vote yes, and I think it's a good deal for the city, and I think the people that go out there, I think it's wonderful. I can't hardly stand to go out there. I can't hardly stand to go in that place. I can't stand the smell. It's crowded. I went in there to look at an animal, and it just turned me off, and something needs to be done, and I commend everybody that's worked on it.
So I guess no matter how maybe the vote comes out, probably we need to look at, raising fees, looking at, the fee structure that we have now in place, like Mr. Scott said, and Eric also agreed with. So that would be definitely something that we probably need to move ahead in the future, no matter how this vote turns out.
I think we also need to take a lesson learned from this. Personally, I feel like this never should have been voted on, knowing that it was an election year and there were going to be new councilmen coming in. I felt like that should have been tabled until the new election.
Well, then you'd be
Because
tabling a
you're
lot of
bringing in
things over and over and over.
Government.
No.
That's the way
Yeah.
government works.
No, thanks.
Look at-
when it comes to that kind of money, I just think I'm walking in
Then
on
you
somebody
stop
else's
business as
decision.
normal then if you do it over a period of time.
Yeah.
That's just my understanding.
I'm ready to vote.
Councilman Fleming, do you have any comments?
I want to vote yes. I've said that all along. I don't make many speeches, but I want to vote yes.
And my final comments, I'm very much in favor. I agree with Ms. Anderson, Councilwoman Anderson. That place needs to be fixed. It is. I said to somebody the other day, I don't often say this, it's depressing.
It's
to
a
go out
city-owned
there.
property that looks terrible.
But I'm going to
It
vote
smells
no
terrible.
because right now, I don't see that we can afford it. Next year, great, maybe. So that's my point.
Well,
It needs to be done. There's no doubt about it. It needs to be done.
And I have another, I guess that brings me to another comment, because even if we spend $500,000, I don't think that's totally coming out of our budget for the year. I thought we were going to bond for that. Is that correct?
Recommendation would be to bond, and really as we move forward with some discussions on finance issues and how to deal with the shortfall we have in a lot of the different funds, any project that we do commit to, our recommendation that we can bond for potentially, we're
So-
going to be recommending that we consider bonding because we have so many things that we cannot use our bonding capacity to cover. We can only look at funding options through either general property taxes or expenditure cuts.
So if we bond that, that does increase a certain dollar amount per year, but not 500,000. So I guess I disagree with Councilman McCampbell, though I respect what he said, and that it would cause people to lose jobs because the payment amount would be maybe equal to one person's pay.
I'll get to this a little bit in the summary at the end. Just to put a little bit of framework. This is, as we deal with financing issues, we need to have a 5-year plan put together. Every decision you make has an impact on other decisions. So as you look at, is this an issue about personnel or other expenditure cuts or other revenue increases? No, but it has an impact on how you address other issues. Right. So it's not absent from the discussion of how it has an impact on everything else. As you looked at where a property tax levy is currently, the amount that is put towards the debt service, paying for our general obligation bonds, is pretty fixed through the year 2020 with the debts that we've already incurred. As you look at borrowing for a project such as this or Cascade Bridge, and I think that was sort of the comment, that you sort of done a little bit of review of that back during the budget time, those two projects. The impact that those two together, when you were doing those discussions, was looking at an increase to the property tax levy of about 22 cents. Was that what you were looking at that point?
Yep.
And so you are going to have an impact on property taxes. And as you do that, that means that when you try to figure out how do you address other issues, it makes it a little harder to talk about increasing property taxes to address those issues, and puts a little bit more pressure on to look at expenditure cuts. So there are impacts. This is one that if you're going to address the issue, you do have the ability and flexibility to use a borrowing to cover our portion of the cost, but it has an impact on how you address future issues.
Well, that's anytime you spend money. Though.
Yeah, and you just need
Anytime.
to be very
So it doesn't have to
cognizant.
be that, it could be anything.
You have to be very cognizant of it right now because this is a very serious spot that we are in financially.
Okay, are we ready to vote then, Council? Kathleen?
McCampbell?
Nay.
Reed?
Aye.
Anderson?
Aye.
Davidson?
Nay.
Fleming?
Aye.
Motion's carried.
We have number 3.
At all possible costs, bring it down under budget. Final comment. Item number 3 on the consent agenda was pulled as a resolution amending the personnel manual for non-union employees. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second? We do have a motion and a second. Mr. Scott, do you have a specific question you wanted to ask? Or comment?
Tim Scott, 2017 South 15th. I guess my first comment would be, why is this on the consent agenda? I mean, it's not routine. I mean, it may happen every year, but it's not really routine. We're talking about a 3.5% to 5% pay increase for our rather large group of employees. We're talking about some changes in grade, I think. I don't know if that's taken place this year, if it took place last year, but there's some, I think, some pretty huge jumps in grade. We've got a community, a country, that's not seeing pay increases at all.
Right.
We're seeing quite the opposite. We're seeing Dresser-Rand reduce pay by $2 and $3 an hour. That's pretty significant. We're seeing them cut the benefits packages significantly. I know firsthand, I got a son that works out there. We're seeing industry that's hiring people on a split scale, a much lower scale. Case New Holland is an example. Significantly less dollars. But we're still using the same routine for making decisions on how we're going to apply pay to city employees. I think it's grotesque. I think that the fact that we're not having a presentation tonight on this so that the public could see it. There was nothing, I try to read the Hawkeye all the time, and I didn't see anything about the personnel manual for non-union employees. I saw nothing in there about it. There should have been a presentation at a public meeting on this.
There was. At our work session last week.
No, a public meeting. The work session is not a public meeting.
It is a public meeting.
No, I can't stand up and say a word about it.
You're
a public meeting.
You're welcome to come.
There needs to be a Jim, come on. If you're going to do that, then you better start having those public meetings in this room, those work sessions in this room.
They are.
That's where we're having them.
They are.
Televised?
Televised.
No.
Well, no, the camera doesn't work, pardon me.
Well, I apologize. I didn't know that. Apparently, that's not being publicized enough either. I go through the council packets online when I have time. Believe me, I'm extremely busy, just like all of you are in your businesses.
I'm sorry, Tim. I don't want to be confrontational. I apologize to you. Excuse me.
No need to. We're discussing things here. I still think a public hearing should have taken place. Not a public meeting, I'm sorry, a public hearing.
I understand.
And those can only take place on nights like tonight.
I understand.
Not at work sessions, okay? And a full presentation should be made, and it should be explained that the dollars amounts that's going up and how it's going to impact the budget. I think the public should know that. And I think the public should know how many employees are going to be laid off in the future. I know one year there was 26 because these raises on top of raises on top of raises caught up to us. And I know from the interviews that the Hawkeye had with the new city manager that that's a very good possibility that that's going to take place, and that's going to mean reduced services. I think we need to put the brakes on the pay increases. You need to step up tonight. At the very least, continue this for 2 weeks and give the public an opportunity to know that this is coming so that they can come and say something. I just happened upon it because I was going through the council packets. And there's a lot of reading. I mean, every page of that manual is in there, whether there's a change on it or not. And if you're not familiar with it from having sat in those seats before, you wouldn't have noticed some things that took place that, Mr. Mayor, I want to talk to you in person about one-on-one, because I questioned some of the decisions that were made, I believe it was last year. And it was probably based on who was sitting in that seat. I apologize for not having a paid lobbyist here tonight to speak on this, but
no, that's okay.
I don't have $5,000 to put forward for that.
Your point is well taken, Mr. Scott. Thank you.
But I guess my first thing I would ask is that the council continue this for 2 weeks, so that a public presentation, so that the human resource person could be prepared to give a public presentation, and then the information on the impact to the budget and what those actual dollars and increases are going to be. And again, we're talking employees that are making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, $99,000 a year in salaries plus benefits. And we can't keep that up. We can't keep adding 3 and 5% to that. We can't give $4,500 a year raises to some individuals and still see the 3, 4, 5% increases in Blue Cross Blue Shield or healthcare costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Hunter, do you want to comment?
I do. As most people know, our former city manager did some reorganizing before he left. And we've had some retirements. And I took the total of the base salaries, which is our salaries. That does not include insurance. That does not include IBERs or municipal fire and police pension payments. And the difference between the last increase and this coming increase in total salaries is $33,591. And I think that is probably the lowest I have ever seen it in my 12 years as Human Resources Director. So there are some lids being put on some of these salaries. We will not pay more than the maximum salary for each salary range. And our salary schedule has not changed now for 3 years. This will be the 3rd year. It has not been adjusted.
There's not been an annual raise?
There has been increases, but our salary schedule on which our increases are based has not changed.
The increases were on the schedule.
So if you're making $50,000 this year and you get a 5% increase, you go to $5,250. Your next raise is not based on that $5,250?
Sure it is, and I will tell you that there are only 3 people receiving a 5% increase.
Okay, 3.5, whatever. The minimum is 3.5. The top is 5% as I read it. I'm saying, are we going to? What I'm talking about is the continual 3.5 to 5% pay increases year after year after year. Only $33,000. Well, that $33,000 is this year. That $33,000 is next year on top of $33,000 the next year,
maybe,
and the next year, and the next year.
Maybe.
And
yeah,
history has it, Mr. Mayor, that will be the case, unless we put the brakes on somewhere.
Yeah, you might recall that the union contracts were negotiated out of a 5-year contract. Yeah.
I know, Mr. Mayor. I'm trying to set the tone.
Yeah.
With your help.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Scott.
Anything else, Ms. Hunter?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. Any other comments from the audience? Council?
I have a little comment, and I sort of agree with Mr. Scott that, that 3 years ago we signed that union contract, and I did not agree with that at that time because that was stating ranges for increases anywhere from 3.5 to 5% over periods of time, and thus we have laid people off during that time. My thing is, if we're looking in the future and we have to lay people off, but other people are getting raises during that time, what does that say about us? I would rather hold raises and freeze salaries than lay people off. Because my question would be, how much within our budget right now is spent on wages and benefits? Over probably 88% to 90%.
General fund, 13.4 million, I think, out of a $17 million budget.
So,
on the general fund.
Yeah, so extremely high. But yet we keep on giving 3.5% increased wages. And I'm not saying the city employees don't deserve it because they do a great job. But at some time we have to back off too and say things we can't afford. And I don't want to see it down the road where we have to lay people off because we can't afford it.
We do need, if I may speak.
Yes.
We do need to be cautious. And because we do have difficulty attracting applicants for a number of our professional positions. And I don't quite know how to fix all that. Waters tried to address that in their last study. I think they did a pretty good job of it. But
Attractive for which position?
Yeah,
So what are we having problems attracting for?
engineer, librarian, finance director, we did not have many applicants. Operations manager a few years ago for Ron.
And you think this is because of?
I don't know that we're competitive, and it doesn't appear we are. Not all positions. I'm not talking all positions on the non-union schedule, but some, definitely some. We were having to pay at the top of the range to get someone in here.
Council, if you talk to Case New Holland, Weingard Company, General Electric, ask them what position they can't fill. Engineer.
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 There's not enough of them.
Right. There's a shortage.
There's a shortage of engineers. When you have that, that's tough.
Yeah.
Finance director, to me, looks very attractive. I mean, it's right up there with a lot of the local banking industry, I would think. And that's not a bad salary, plus full benefits.
Okay, anything else, council? What's your pleasure? What would you like to do?
I'd like to adjourn.
Shall
I
we-
second.
Shall we vote? We can't adjourn.
What do we have to vote on?
We have a vote carried on this motion.
To allow the 3.5.
We have a motion to amend the personnel manual for non-union employees.
Oh.
And a second on the table. Any other comments? Okay, Kathleen?
McCampbell. Reed.
Nay.
Anderson. Aye. Davidson.
Aye.
Fleming.
Aye.
Now we have time for comments from the audience. Anyone from the audience wishing to comment on something that's not already been discussed?
Leon Shahan, 1821 Mount Pleasant Street. Well, it's been discussed somewhat, but we're working our way around it, but I want to know on the city's finances, when are we going to have a serious discussion? It's nice to see Councilman McCampbell get concerned about the situation. We've been running a budget deficit in the city since the mid-90s of $3 to $4 million a year.
I think Mr. Furneaux can answer that question for you just right now if you let him.
How about I address this a little bit in my comments
Okay.
afterwards?
He's got an answer for you. So.
Okay, that'll be fine. But I'm really concerned here. We've been running a budget deficit of $3 to $4 million a year since the mid-90s. We've used all our cash resources. We've maxed out the credit cards. And I'm not one of these anti-government fanatics. What I'm looking at is, I've got a home that on a really good day, I could sell it for $35,000 if I put $30,000 in it fixing it up. Yeah, that's a problem. Now, here's the next problem. From this point till the end of my normal life expectancy, about 24 years, I will pay more in property taxes with what's going on in the legislature, and I know the proposals didn't pass this year, but it came a lot closer. It's going to happen. I will pay more in property taxes on my houses from now until the day I die than what I paid for the house when I first bought it. That's a problem. You know, looking at the net value of my house where I'm at right now, like a lot of other people in this town, you know, it looks good just to walk away. Now, I'm not totally against government, and I don't want to say that, but I hire government, local government, for police and fire protection, keeping the snow off the streets. But we've racked up a lot of debt here on something called economic development. We're subsidizing a casino now. Despite your financial distress, you are subsidizing a casino to to me a moral hazard to the tune of $800,000 a year. Now, if I was running the budget, that would have a big bullseye on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leon.
Thank you.
Leon.
Mr. Stratton?
Stan Stratton, 2809 Shamrock Drive. Real simple question. I can't understand your finances, but we have a debt limit to what we can spend, the money we brought in, right, a certain percentage. When we're maxed out, what do we do? Start bonding everything? Is that what we do?
The debt limit is the bonding, and we're at about 75% of our capacity for what we can borrow. We still have room within that. If we were not to issue any more debt, general obligation bonds, we would be down to 60% of our bonding capacity by the end of next year. So we are at a high level, but we still have flexibility within our bonding capacity.
That's why I didn't understand. I thought maybe we went to that limit, then our way out would just start getting bonds. And we said, well, how do we pay for the bonds?
But I still don't think it's a good idea to max that out, though, either. Go ahead.
Talking about you're laying off everybody for $300,000 or $400,000 on animal shelter. What are you going to do if you get that bridge? Hell, you won't have anybody working with you.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think there's creative ways we can get that bridge done, Stan. It's called thinking outside the box. A lot of people said it, and I did too when I ran my campaign, but it's not just a soundbite to me. I've got a lot of thoughts on how to do it, but thoughts are, they have to materialize to become.
Just my thought, too. What are we going to do then?
Okay.
That's all.
Jim Scott, 2017 South 15th. One other thing for you, council. July 1st, landfill fees in Des Moines County is going to $47 a ton. Lee County's at $38.50 and has no intention of increasing, and Scott County's at $20 a ton. We're going to be almost 2.5 times. I know there's excuses, but what's the real reason? What's really going on out there? Why can't we run a landfill like Scott County runs a landfill? Why can't we run one like Lee County runs?
Or Jefferson County just decreased their tipping fees.
Just decrease their tipping fees. Yep. So, something's going on.
I don't know, maybe that's
I don't disagree. Yep. Any other comments? Okay, Mr. Furneaux.
All right, first I'll end out just a brief page for y'all. Just an update on two different issues. One is the Dresser-Rand facility. When we did this project back in 2007 to maintain Dresser-Rand in the community, one of the things that we did was took on $1 million loan for purchasing of their existing downtown facility with the intent that we were going to be able to market that and bring in another business. I think that there was a point where there was a interested party that was being worked on. I think really at the time that whole process was going on. That did not materialize. With the flooding event that occurred in 2010, that building was seriously degraded in value, and there was no FEMA flooding that was available to take care of it, and making it impractical to resell. And we got to the point where we're tearing it down now. Well, we still are making payments to the tune of what, $9,233.56 a month. We began those payments in December 2007. We'll make them for 10 years. That was a 10-year note at 2% interest. I think back while Doug was still here, the request was made to the state to forgive the balance of the loan, and I know that the mayor had followed up with a similar request that be considered earlier this year. Iowa Department of I get confused between IDEA and IDED. Iowa Department of Economic Development, and then the board for the Iowa Economic Development Authority, IEDA, maybe it is. They considered our request formally this last week to have that note forgiven, the balance, which is $576,000 and change, still remaining to be paid. They denied that request. And to have done anything different would have been pretty difficult for them to have done. They do not have it would have set a precedent. They have never forgiven a loan such as this before. They do not want to be in the business of forgiving loans when they have limited resources themselves. They did say that they will continue to talk with us at the staff level, but they have formally rejected our request to have that loan forgiven. So we'll continue to be making payments on that project through 2017 if nothing comes up. And that fits within the discussion on finances too. That's another one of the debts that's sitting out there that needs to be taken care of. We've covered a couple of years worth of payments on that out of the local option sales tax. There's a portion that goes towards economic development. There's going to be a request for a couple of years worth of payments that we have made, not been reimbursed as a city, for the economic development group to consider that they reimburse us for those monthly payments for the last 2 years. And I would assume that absent anything else that we'll be requesting that into the future. If the local option sales tax doesn't renew, we're going to have to come up with a different source to cover that debt. Discussion on finances. We have sat down with Travis Squires from Piper Jaffray a couple of times, and we will continue to over the next few weeks. First 2 meetings we've had were 4 hours each. I assume that we'll probably meet with them again this week for 4 hours. We don't have good answers for how we address some of our issues. When you look at the debts that we have in different funds, for one reason or another, you can look out at over the course of a decade or two out at Flint Hills. That account has built up a debt of $700,000. The Recplex has built up a debt of $700,000. Both of those funds over the course of the last year pretty much broke even, but over 20 years there have been times where they haven't. We have a recreation account that I don't have no idea what it is that goes back at least 10 years that has a debt of $100,000. We came into this year, road use tax, a debt of $550,000. TIF funds, one of them sits at a debt of about $800,000, the other at a debt of about $500,000. We have capital project accounts. There's airport accounts, 5 different separate funds from back in the early 90s that sit with a debt of $200,000 that were never cleaned up.
From the early 90s?
Probably 1991 was when those projects occurred. We have a couple of different street projects that have occurred over the years that sit at debts of about $200,000 each. A couple of sewer projects, $200,000 to $300,000 each. We have when the Vision Iowa project was done, we spent $1.2 million and never funded it. We did borrow for a portion of that, and yet that balance was never transferred. It was probably used to cover another debt. You added up the debts that we have in different accounts when we came into this year, about where we're at now, $7.5 million. Some of that we can restructure. Some of it is with sewer projects, so we can use this. Sewer needs to figure out a way to cover it in their operating budget over a period of time. We can look at what can we restructure the debt, like for example with the TIF projects. Those are, hopefully we can push out some of those debt payments to future years. So there's enough valuation in those funds to cover the debts. Those are not easy scenarios to run. We have to bring in bond counsel. We have to figure out where do these monies first go into deficit territory or debt territory, and what are we justified legally to come up with solutions for? Can you bond for some of it and push it out? Well, we don't know. These are just each little piece of that. I went through a dozen, and there's more funds that are involved. Each of them has a little bit different details about when the debt occurred, and there are limitations about when you can go back and borrow to cover a past debt, meaning that really the only simple solution is to take money from the general fund, which only came into the year with $600,000. $17 million budget, $600,000 is not very much. It is cutting it close. we don't have simple answers. What we're looking at is we have to go through this in a systematic and patient way. We have to make sure that we talk about things in the right steps. I mentioned in response to a question from Council Anderson, and I called the mayor Anderson in a letter.
You thought I was swimming earlier, so you're okay.
I even wore skirt tonight.
We've called him a number of things, too.
Both in front and behind. In response to a question earlier, I mentioned, one of the steps that we've taken just right this year in terms of our operating budget, looking at the fire department, they've had significant amount of overtime, and it has to do with where they put some minimum staffing levels. On a crew that 14 people that man each shift, we have a minimum staffing requirement of 11 that we are operating under. I said, let's move it back to 10. We can still operate at 10. Just a easy step that we can take that doesn't require a lot of negotiations to make sure that we're doing things appropriately. But a lot of this does involve negotiations. Bev and I are going to meet with our union representatives tomorrow and talk about some of these same concerns that we have about how do we come up with answers to this. We want their input and make sure that they're part of the team as we try to put together some possible responses. Ask them for suggestions about what can or cannot be done from their perspective. And we want to make sure that we take that into into consideration before we look at what are the other alternatives. Councilman McCampbell, you bring up a topic. Does it mean that there might be some personnel cuts? That might be something, but we need to wait until we give other things a chance to work through. Let's see what other recommendations can come out. There are balancing acts that we need to do between raising fees, potential for raising property taxes for some of this. Or do you say that we hold the line on all those things and we cut the only way that we come to a balance is through expenditure reductions? That's some negotiations that we have to do, but we cannot do it by looking at part of the picture. We have to look at the whole picture and make sure that we do it in a systematic manner. Working with Travis, what we're trying to put together for consideration is by the end of August to be able to have a way that we can have a 5-year plan that looks at projected revenues, projected expenditures, the way we're doing business, and based off of what's historically occurred. For example, our property valuations have gone up about 1.5% annually. We need to build a realistic revenue growth with that in mind, what's happened historically with property valuation. We need to take a look at our current capital improvement plan, what we had originally put on there over the next 5 years. Where does it fit into that context of the next 5 years, and what does it do to debt service and our overall property tax levy if we incorporate that in there? And that can give you an idea, just based off of what we've committed to, what's going to happen to our property tax levy over 5 years, and see what's our task there. Are we wanting to hold the line regardless? Are we willing to allow some increase? Are we saying we need to go down? But we have to do it with the whole thing in mind. And the goal is, if we can develop those numbers by the end of August and to get a chance to get some of that information to you, hopefully the end of September, beginning of October, we can have our goal setting session. The last one was in March 2011. It's time to have another one where we go and set what are our priorities as we move into the next budget cycle. That goal setting session that we do late September, early October, will set the basis for how do we budget when we go into November, when the department heads are asked to put together their budgets for the next year. We need to be really careful with what we do for spending in the meantime. But we got to be careful that we make sure that we don't just do a gut check reaction and not take the whole thing into account. A base level of change in our overall structure that I've kind of put out, and I think I have it in here If we're going to get anywhere near financial solvency where we want to be, we need to make at least $1 million annual change over the next 5 years in some form or fashion. Whether that's raising revenues or cutting expenditures, coming up with innovative ways to combine departments, change duties, some way to reduce expenditures to make sure that we can work. We cannot do this in 1 year. This is a several-year piece or step process that we want to make sure that the decisions that we make to come to it, to get that solution, makes sense for the long term and allow us to have a path to get to where we want to go. And you know, we're still I'm trying to get a vision for how this works. We need to, as a council, get that vision. We need, as department heads, to be able to get the vision. And then we need to make sure that we have a good understanding from all of our different employee groups to know where do we sit. In response to some points that were made about our current contract, it is our current contract. We have to live up to the terms that we have. It doesn't mean that we can't talk, as we talk to the unions tomorrow, it may be that they're saying, you know, part of this process means we look at some other terms, but that's their decision. We have a contract. So, that's my brief statement for tonight.
Well said, though. I mean, you're on
Yes.
the right track.
Mr. Furneaux, thank you.
That's what we
Because
have to do.
that's what I think a lot of people have wanted to hear the last few years, is somebody to come in and lay it out the way it is. We all know there's been problems. And
With a plan.
and lay it out, and let's look at trying to fix it now. Thank you.
Council, do you have any comments, closing comments? I do want to congratulate the graduates from yesterday with Burlington High School, Notre Dame High School in West Burlington. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Kathleen?
McCampbell.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Fleming.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. God bless you, and God bless Burlington.
I think you're going to find, too, that we're well prepared to work.